Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bookish Hour. I'm Sarah Burr.
And I am J.C. Kenney, and happy Thursday night. It's the weekend, folks, because we have someone who's going to get us into the beautiful time of horse racing. We're almost to May and the Kentucky Derby. Sarah, I think it's time to get bookish.
Yes, we are joined this evening by the wonderful and the prolific Mary Seifert, who is the author of the Kenney and Maverick Cozy Mystery Series. So we're getting super cozy this evening. We've got a lot of ground to cover because, as I said, prolific is I think it's a pretty good descriptor because Mary is already on book 9 of her cozy series. So we have got a lot of adventures to cover.
5, 4, there we go, 9.
But don't worry, folks. We will make sure that you are properly introduced to Kenney and the adorable Maverick as we go through our show. But before we start learning about them, we would love to learn about Mary. Mary, can you please introduce yourselves to our wonderful viewers?
Good evening. I am talking to you from Minnesota, and today there is no snow on the ground. So
Ooh.
it's
All right.
it's warm, it's walkable. The dog likes walking. My husband likes walking. I like walking. So it's good today. Good weather, sunshine, first day of spring, right?
Fabulous.
Allegedly, it's not very spring-like here in Indianapolis, but Mary, we are really super thrilled to have you here. And like Sarah said, you've written so far at least, a 9-book series about this woman, Kenney, and about this dog, Maverick. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I was walking my dog, Maverick, around a slough, and I was looking off into the corner in the distance and off the slough, and there was an old car, and there were weeds growing through the windows and the trunk of the car. And I said to myself, I think there might be a body in that car. And the story was born. I was always fascinated with puzzles, so I decided that I wanted to write a puzzle, write a mystery. And about the same time I started writing that mystery, I found out that Wilmer, which was my hometown at the time, was in a place that in 1870 was close to Columbia, Minnesota, which no longer exists, in a county called Monongalia, which no longer exists. So my story takes place in Columbia and Monongalia, and in 1870 it was there, but I could use the geography from my area to write my story. And the next summer, when I was kind of finishing up writing the story, I kind of knew what I wanted Kenney to be, and I kind of knew what I wanted to happen. And I had my murder, and I had my murderer, and I had it all solved. And then I decided that the NSA was looking for cryptographers, and I thought that was what Kenney should have been in the first place. So that was the beginning of the story. She had gone to school for cryptography, and that didn't work out because life was not kind to her. So she became a math teacher instead. And she and her dog Maverick solve crimes in West Central Minnesota.
I love that idea that you've taken this town that was like just erased and brought it back to life. That is a really, really cool concept, especially, when we're building these worlds as writers, that you kind of take this footprint and you get to fill it in. So it'll be really cool to kind of dive into your process on that, Mary. We do have folks in chat saying happy spring. We've got Farmhouse Reader saying happy first day of spring. DHB saying good evening. Cheers to the equinox. Summer is coming. Thank goodness, because summer is my favorite time of writing. JC, I have to ask, have you ever been on a walk? I don't know if you do go for walks with Maria, but have you ever been on a walk and been like, oh, could be a dead body and something that you come across?
Not a dead body, not on a walk.
Oh.
I have come across, a few sketchy little things that have kind of plotted, gave me some ideas, but nothing quite as spooky as that. So, There was the one time that down the street, somebody was involved in a car crash, and by the time we got down to the car, that the driver had actually gotten out of the car, and so when we first went to see the car, nobody was in there. So it was like, okay, well, this is kind of freaky. So that's close as I've come. How about you?
I mean, because I believe that you had written about that, Mary, on your blog, and I was literally like, that is me every single time I go outside. Like, I am always like, is that a dead body? Is that a dead body? Is that a dead body? I listened to a podcast where there's kind of a running joke about, when somebody stumbles across a body in real life, they're like, they thought it was a mannequin at first. And it's like, it's never a mannequin. And for me, it's always a mannequin, but it's never a dead body, which is a good thing. But I found that part of your process, that's like what started the whole thing, to be really, really amazing. So had you been like really, you'd mentioned that you love puzzles, but how did you decide mystery and then cozy mystery from that kind of aha moment?
I loved mysteries my entire life. My grandfather loved mysteries. He had this tiny library, and as long as I brought the book back, I could read any book from his library that I wanted to. So he had the entire Ellery Queen magazine section. He had all the Alfred Hitchcock. He had mystery novels. I also got to read the regular ones. I read Heidi. I read Gone with the Wind. I read Dr. Zhivago. I read The Great Escape. And he had all those, and I could exchange them. But he loved mysteries. He gave that love of mysteries to my mother, and she passed it on to me. My dad was a notorious storyteller. So I hoped to mesh the two together, and I wanted to write a mystery. I tried many, many times to find an agent for my mystery. And in November of 21, I was so fortunate. I got a call from Columbine Publishing Group, and they said, we really like your story, but it's a cozy mystery. It's too long. You need to make it, you need to do more of what the cozy mystery expects. So we cut 15,000 words, cut a couple characters, and it already had a sleuth that was amateur. She already had found the body, but nothing happened, so that she was afraid. There was no graphic violence on the page. It was a cozy mystery, but I thought it was a regular mystery, but it wasn't. So then Columbine Publishing Group ended up taking the books, and that's how I got the entire series. So I was very, very, in fact, I loved to write the books about, each book has a cocktail, and the title for the first book was Titanic Cocktail, because there is a premiere for another Titanic movie, and they're serving the cocktail that was served the last night the Titanic was afloat, that I got from this book. It says, the last night on the Titanic, unsinkable drinking and dining. And they knew what the cocktail was. And I thought it was so wonderful that you knew what kind of food they might have had. The cocktail was an Italian ice. And to make the Italian ice takes about 6 hours. So it was kind of a long process, but it was very pretty. We designed the drink. We made it blue, because we got all this water, and it had the ice floating in it, so it looked like an iceberg. But because it took so long, we had to do a little bit of revamping. Now, if you use Dairy Queen ice cream and throw the cocktail on top, it's all the same.
That is fabulous.
So,
go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to ask, because you had mentioned the Titanic and how there's this movie premiere in book one that, Katie is moved to this town after a tragedy in her life, and she's kind of looking to rebuild things. And she gets work as I would say maybe like a cater waiter for this event. I was just really curious, because I don't normally associate Minnesota with the Titanic. So what was like the Titanic connection for you? Is it something that you had been very interested in at the time, or is there something about the Titanic that I don't know? Because actually I've never seen the movie before. So I don't know much about the Titanic. So I need you to educate us.
There were people on the Titanic that have relatives that have, survived, and they're all over the United States. And so it's like very close relatives, but there were some priests that were on the Titanic. There were some of them have people that know, it's kind of like playing that the 6 degrees of separation game.
Yep.
And if you go far enough back, people are related. And I wanted Ida to have a relative that could have been on the Titanic. So she's got that relation, and that kind of took it back. And then because she had it, somebody else could have that too. And then they wanted to use the town because there was in fact, just so you know me now. And for all those people that are watching, hundreds of thousands, right? So you know me, my mother, my grandfather knew a man whose name was Harvey Sconce. Harvey Sconce was a geneticist who worked making light and airy popcorn kernels because my grandfather worked for Cracker Jack. Ooh. And he knows Thomas and Edison and Henry Ford. So that puts us all 5 degrees of separation away from Thomas Edison and Henry Ford.
That's cool.
I like that.
that is fabulous. So that kind of dovetails right into a question that Sarah and I think both would really love to have you talk about some, Mary, is your research. Because, for example, in some of the opening sequences of Book 9, which is the brand new one, Juleps, Jockeys, and Justice, we have a character who comes in and starts filling us all in about horse racing and things like that. And Katie even talks about, okay, this young woman has definitely done her research here. You clearly, share a love of research in your books. Can you talk a little bit about, why, where does the dedication and love for the deep dive into research, where does that come from?
I think when we write a mystery, when we write a story, we want to make sure that it's not totally unbelievable, even though it's fiction. So I want enough of the true things to come through, something that they can check out. Well, that could be true. So maybe that could be true too. Enough of that so that you can say that it's not all made up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I've got to be honest, reading Book 9, I'm from Indianapolis, as our viewers know, and so we're not far from Louisville. We're only about a couple hours from Louisville. My mom and dad, especially my mom, was a huge horse racing fan. So I grew up. I got such a charge out of the fact that what's her name? I can't believe I've got Lorelei. When Lorelei talks about how she spent the weekend reading Dick Francis, my mom and dad both read Dick Francis. I remember seeing those books on the shelves at home. And the Kentucky Derby was must-see TV. That was appointment viewing for me growing up. And even to this day, my wife and I always watch the Derby. So it was so much fun reading. I could just feel the excitement, for, the Kentucky Derby in particular in horse racing. I've never been to Churchill Downs, but I have been to a couple other tracks down that way. Cool. So I guess kind of, that's just me rambling on about myself. And so enough about myself. Why horse racing, Kentucky Derby as kind of the backdrop for this particular story?
Each of my novels happens during 1 month of Katie's first year of teaching. So book number 1 happens in September, 2 is October, and 9 is in May. And the big activity that happens in May is the Kentucky Derby. And the Kentucky Derby does include many things that you can get to involved with math. You've got the parimutuel betting, you've got the gait of the horse, you've got the speed, you've got the length, you've got distance, you've got the feed, you've got the economics of horse racing everywhere. So that's why I thought I could use the Kentucky Derby. Cool. That came up from the May date.
I love that is your thought process with like the numbers and the math behind it, because you are also a mathematician. It's not just Katie, right?
I was a math teacher. I
nice.
was.
Okay. All right. Because we have to talk about the enthusiasm which Katie approaches her teaching, which I thought to be really special, because in book 1, which was what I was reading, she's in town for the first time. She's prepping her classroom. She's kind of giving all of these really nice tips and tricks for like, okay, like if my students are zoning out while I'm lecturing, I can quickly pivot and like present them this puzzle or this riddle, and they can switch it up and learn through application. And so one thing that quickly becomes woven into the story, folks, is that the people that Katie meets, once they learn that she loves puzzles, they start giving her puzzles. And I'm like, this town is literally the best town ever, because they like adopt her so quickly and like give her the sustenance that she needs to thrive in these puzzles. So I would love to chat about just like the process of number one, like coming up with the puzzles yourself, figuring out what they are, Mary, like, and maybe you can share some with our viewers to kind of give them a little bit of a hint as to what types of puzzles these are. A lot of them are really fun word plays. And I do want to comment really quickly there's a farmhouse reader is saying, I spent many summers in Louisville with my grandparents, some of the best times of my life. So JC, you're in good company with being, I love the Derby. I think it's such a fun like atmosphere, but something that I don't think is really like highlighted a lot in cozy mysteries. So we can also talk about that. But sorry, Mary, let's chat first about your riddles and your puzzles, because I love a good word, like a teaser, brain teaser. Absolutely adore them. Were they always like a part of your story, or did you think like later on, like, oh, it would be cool if I could weave these in?
I think I started with a couple things that I wanted to have in every book. One was I wanted to have a puzzle, and there is a different puzzle in each of the novels. So the very first novel has the cryptoquip as the very most important puzzle, the kind that you get in the newspaper. So Katie would be able to solve that and come up with a location. In the second, I use a Rubik's Cube. There is a puzzle written on the sides of the Rubik's Cube, and if you can't solve the Rubik's Cube, then you can't solve the puzzle. So that's part of what she needs for that one. In book number 3, I've got
that's my favorite.
Yeah, I remember that from
Da Vinci
Dan
Code.
Brown, the Da Vinci Code. Yeah.
Well, things like that. I just am so intrigued with that, and I decided that could be something that I could use, and it could survive outside in the wilderness, out in the woods, out in a tree, and Katie could still figure out how to solve that one. Book number 4 uses musical cryptography, so it's not an actual physical puzzle, but rather how different composers use their notes to write messages. For example, Bach signed some of his pieces with B flat A, and the letters that he used in the notes that he used, and he signed his name. So did a number of others, and that was what I used in book number 4 for Katie to solve
That's so cool.
the mystery. And I tried to do different kinds of puzzles for each of them. I also thought it was very important, because Katie was going to be a cryptographer, that I talk about female cryptographers, because there is a history there. And we kind of found out that from Hidden Figures. There are a lot of women who did a lot of wonderful things that didn't get credit for it until now, and it's way late. In 2022, the post office came up with a forever stamp, and it honored female cryptographers from World War I and World War II. And those are the characters that I have Katie bring through into the story. She'll talk about somebody that she learned about when she was in school, or one of these women who did something that might be like what the kids are doing in class, or something that you might know of because of a woman inventor, a woman entrepreneur, a woman that's in cryptography. So I thought that was part of what I used also for my puzzles. Those special women.
That's like, there's so many levels of, I love Easter eggs in our writing, where we kind of, put these things for our readers to discover, but they also like have a hidden meaning for ourselves. So that's really amazing that you've been able to layer in so much about this field that Katie didn't. Like she got like a taste of it before she was pulled back from it. And I'm wondering, Mary, I think it would probably be a really good time to maybe share a little bit more about Katie's backstory, what has brought her to Columbia. And also one thing, and JC, I'm not sure if you, since you were reading book 9, what your thoughts are about Katie and Maverick's relationship, but I like color me surprised when I started reading book 1, and we have like a interesting relationship between Katie and her dog. And I was like, this is really, it's different from a cozy mystery that I have come across, but I really liked the realness of it. So maybe share a little bit about that with our readers.
When Katie was in cryptanalysis school, she fell in love and she was married for 17 days and her husband died. And that happens in the first paragraph of book 1. So I'm not any spoiler alerts. But one of the things that she experienced with that man was his dog back in England, because that's where they were in school. They were at the Royal Holloway. When she came back to stay with her dad, to take care of her dad, who was also injured in the same accident that killed her husband, she was trying to figure out what to do with life. So she was taking care of her dad, and little did she know that her husband had a puppy of his dog from England shipped to the United States for Katie. So now she has a dog from a husband that she loved who's no longer with her, and all that dog does is remind her of that first love. And she's having a really hard time wanting to keep that dog for part of that book. So I think that's part of the relationship that at first she doesn't know what to do. She never had a dog. She was struggling with that. After 9 books over, they did, work things out.
I was assuming so because it is the Katie and Maverick series, but I was just like there is a scene where she's kind of looking for comfort and she is reaching for the dog, but she's like, nope, I don't. I can't rely on him because he's not going to be here because I'm going to find him a better home. And you can see that she's physically drawn to him and but her mind is kind of telling her no, I'm still processing my grief and trying to figure out what to do with life. So I just thought that their relationship was really special. And there's such a deep connection there that we all love our animals more than life itself. But the fact that he was a gift from her deceased husband is just oh gosh, what a precious story.
He was a precious dog too. I even have a picture of my Maverick.
Oh, puppy.
What a good boy.
There we go.
He's a cutie.
Oh,
yeah, and this is coming from a cat guy. But yeah, we all love all pets here. Mary, that's one thing though that I want to ask is talking about Katie and her brief period, married. Oftentimes in cozy mysteries, we will have our main characters who may have some history, some traumatic thing happened in the past, but nothing like what happened to Katie. That is pretty seriously traumatic. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose something that huge and something that awful, for Katie, and how that has, informed her decision making and her choices, through the next, for us as readers, 9 months of her life?
I think she needed to know that she had very deep emotions. She also, because of that, didn't want to continue as a cryptologist, which was something she really loved, but couldn't stay in that job. So she had to find something else. And that gave her the opportunity to try and find another job. Unfortunately, when you're looking for a job and you're a cryptologist and you want to find something outside of cryptology, there isn't a lot that you can do. So in my case, she was accepted as a math teacher. She had a math background, but there weren't a lot of opportunities for her. So she had to move away from her father and her stepmother. And she had to start doing something on her own. So I wanted to make it had to be a cleaner break. I didn't want to have a divorce. I didn't want the guy hanging around. I wanted her to be able to really strike out on her own. So she did. And being that math was the only dog she got.
But she lands in this really, really cool town. And everybody is, sometimes when you have the outsider coming in, you are met with some resistance. But there are just folks in Columbia that welcome her with open arms. I would love to chat about your supporting characters. We've got her landlady, Ida, who is like one of my favorite supporting characters that I've come across in Cozy Mysteries recently. Like, she is just a character and a half who like deserves her own series. But then there's also Jane, who I was like, I love Jane. Like, she is a girl's girl. I loved her energy. When they first met, I was like, ooh, are we going to have like a mean girl situation? And maybe, I don't know if I haven't read far enough, but right now I love Jane. So hopefully like Jane stays around. And so Mary, share with us just some of the characters that folks will meet beyond Katie and Maverick in your series, and kind of the roles that they play in Katie's life.
Ida is her landlady. Ida's last name is Klemaszewski. That's a story in itself. That is a family name from my husband's side of the family.
Oh, nice.
Generations back. And I am the family historian. I have all of the records. I got this little silver box from a grandmother's friend, and she said, "This is your family." And I go, "Okay." And I open it up, and it has a bill from 1969. But I went farther down, and it has birth certificates and death certificates and marriage certificates and land deeds. And I got a call from one of my husband's brothers, and he said, "Did you know that you spelled Klemaszewski wrong?" And I said, "Luke, I have all the records from the family. It's spelled 14 different ways. I can spell it any way I want."
Oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
And she is that character. She is exactly this person who can, this name is big enough for her, although she's a very short woman. She's got a powerful personality. She wears her hair red. She wears gypsy clothes if she can. She knows everything. She sings. She's an actress. And she's just lives life as always. She was an art teacher at the high school, so she also understands what Katie is going through as a teacher. Jane is, of course, a new teacher as well. She is someone who helped Katie when Maverick needed somebody to get him out of trouble. She is also always there when Katie needs somebody to talk to.
Oh, good.
She is. She is that girl's girl. She is. And the third first-year teacher, his name is Drew, and Drew is not very welcoming. He's sort of snide and sort of know-it-all, but you might get to like him better. It's just that he starts off on the wrong foot for Katie and for Jane as well. In the later books, the characters that carry through, there is a veterinarian, of course. He takes care of Maverick. There is a doctor who takes care of Katie. There are, Katie's dad actually moves in with Katie. He is too unwell to stay with her stepmother, but not well enough to be by himself. So Katie takes him in. So he will be in future books as well.
Oh, that's good.
And then she's got a cast of students that are always in the books, because as a teacher, 30% of your day is spent with with those kids. And that's more than, if you're talking about awake time, or way more than 30%. 8 hours of your 16 hours, half the time is spent with those kids. So they are also in every book, and it's the same cast of kids.
And speaking of the kids, I want to say, first off, thank you for spending your career as a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My younger son is a teacher. I come from a family of teachers, and teachers don't get the props and the respect that y'all deserve. So I want to say thank you for doing that. And so, along that line, one of the things that I've talked about this on the show many times is I tend to write main characters that are closer in age to me. I'm 59, and so my current Elmo books, Elmo is in his mid-40s. Sarah, you are, well, like I said, Sarah's young enough to be my daughter, folks. We all know that. Sarah's characters are about her age. And Mary, could you talk a little bit about the fact that, you are writing people who are from a different generation? That's not easy. How do you do it? Because you do it well. So how do you manage to pull that off?
I write what I want to be.
Okay.
I think I love hanging around with kids. I have children of my own, so some of their friends are coming through in some of the characters. Some of the teaching things that happened to me are also being written about in some of the books. Some of my older students, they're older than Sarah too, by the way. Some of them recognize themselves in some of the opportunities that happened to my children in the stories in the book. So some of that is from experience, and some of it is just talking to some of the kids that you have around now. They're really fun and they're good kids and nice to be around. So I can take off on that. But
I'm also still trying to grasp the idea that Katie has had to deal with a murder mystery for every month that she has been in the town of Columbia. And I wonder is it something, because of her background and her love of puzzles, is it something that she is driven to do, or that she feels a need to do? Or is it just the basic of like, someone's in trouble, I have to step in and help them? What's her motivation for getting involved in these different crimes that are happening?
I think at first it is because there is a crime and it needs to be solved. And she feels a responsibility no matter what it is when there is a problem. And oftentimes in these mysteries, in my mysteries, the puzzle will go unsolved by other people who might be trying to solve that same thing, that whatever is happening. In book 1, the police see what's going on, but she's got this little bitty piece of information that she wants to share, and they don't want to hear it from her because it's a little odd, but it has to do with puzzle solving. So that's part of it too. She has this little glimpse of a solution that they need, and they might not want to take it. So if they don't take it from her, she has to go around them and solve it herself.
And how do you come up with the different mysteries that you have in each of your books, Mary? Is it something where, let's talk about the book 10 in theory. Do you start with your mystery? Do you start with your drink? Do you start with like what is going on in Katie's life? What's the catalyst that helps a story blossom from a concept to an entire manuscript? Because I know the month of the year so far, what I'm doing for each of the months, I know what happens in a school year. So in book 10, it would be graduation month, or it would be the month where the last activities of a school year happen. Mm-hmm. Track, track. What else happens in spring? I'm writing book 10, and it is the National Mock Trial competition that happens. The kids are going, which happens in June, right during graduation time. So I know about when it's happening. I know what might be happening around that. I also know how I want my victim to pass away. And then I have to work through how I want that person to have this happen. I have always wanted to use dimethyl sulfate for a murder weapon.
Okay,
what?
Tell me what that is. I've heard of it, but I'm drawing a blank.
It's a chemical that it is toxic if you breathe it in.
Okay.
Ooh.
Okay.
So, I think it's used in perfumes though, and it's used in dyes, and it's been used.
Okay.
It's out there. You get too much of it, it's going to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
So I knew what my murder weapon was going to be. I knew who my victim was going to be. I knew where it was going to happen. I knew when it was going to happen, and the rest of it sort of fits in after that.
Oh, nice. So like a combo between plotter and pantster a little bit.
Yep, I have most of the sketchy outline,
Mm-hmm.
and then
I like that.
So, kind of along that line, before I ask my question, folks, I want to remind you that as this has been a fun, delightful conversation, we're already halfway through. So if you have questions for Mary, drop them in the chat, because, before we know it, we're going to run out of time, which is never any fun. But Mary, now that... also, I want to mention, I happen to see that, folks, this is your assignment. Mary's a teacher. Like I said, my mom was a teacher. So my assignment, I'm putting on my teacher hat here, is to go get the first book from Amazon. It's free right now. So, go do that, and you can thank Mary later by buying the rest of the series. So, my question for you is, speaking of the series, you've talked about, we have book 9, you're working on book 10. When you started this whole thing with Katie and Maverick, did you plan for a long series, or has that just kind of happened organically? I know you've talked about doing something by month, but what was your thought? Because I'll be honest, I'm going to preface this by saying, if your thought was, I'm going to do every month for a year, that is audacious, and I tip my hat to you, because that I can't imagine trying to take that on. So, what was your thought at the beginning?
I did have 9 months of the school year.
Wow.
Put it out. I kind of knew who I wanted to maybe do away with. I kind of wanted to know when in the school year and what was happening for each of the things and it would be student involved, So March is going to be spring break. February is Valentine's Day. So I'm using the months and what happens during those months as well. And I think that was probably most important, was that I had my school year planned out.
Okay.
Fortunately, some of the crimes that happen now are not the ones that I planned. So I have more stories because they've moved back in the year.
And
so you've got year 2 of, and before we know it, this, your hometown, and I wrote it down here, and I apologize, of Columbia, Minnesota is going to overtake Cabot Cove, Maine as the murder capital of America, right?
Oh, yes, I know.
And to think that it all started.
Yeah, that you got that many books. It's good.
And it all started with, taking a walk and seeing an abandoned car. I would love to know if whoever abandoned that car, like, if they have any idea how much they have impacted your life.
No, but the car isn't there anymore.
So that's a mystery within itself.
Yeah. So, Mary, one of the things I do, and I apologize, I realize we're kind of bouncing all around here, but I do want to go back because I've read book 9. It's a really interesting and intriguing murder where, I'm not giving anything away, folks, here, but in book 9, a human isn't the murderer. A horse is. Mary, can you talk a little bit about how you came up with this idea? And part of the reason my jaw literally dropped when I was reading this, because I'm a big fan of the TV show The Irrational on NBC with Jesse L. Martin, and they recently had an episode where somebody is murdered and they originally think a horse did it. And so it was just like, holy cow, this all just kind of came together. So could you talk to me a little bit about how you came up with that specific I'm going to say murder, that plot device for this particular story, because it's so unusual.
I think for me, the Kentucky Derby has always been a family celebration. So I was always going to try and write a story about the Kentucky Derby, whether it was going to be for this series or just to write a story about the Kentucky Derby. And if you're going to write about the Kentucky Derby, the horse has to play a very important part. And if it's a murder mystery, what's the second most important part that you can play if you're to be the murderer? So I think that I wanted the horse to be very, very important, and that was the way that I could do that. So, and I think they're beautiful animals, and that's how it came about.
So,
did you grow up around horses, or have you spent time around horses? My wife grew up. She grew up on a farm, and so they had a horse. I'm a city kid. I have the utmost respect for horses. They're gorgeous, powerful animals, and they kind of scare me because they're gorgeous, powerful animals.
When I was 10, I won a pony. My grandfather put all of the grandchildren's name in a raffle at a county fair. They were raffling a pony, and we got a call that I won a pony. So we owned a pony for a year. I have never owned a horse. I have ridden horses. We used to go on, they had a place where you could go and just ride for a day. We used to do that quite a bit when I was growing up, but I never owned my own horse. I just think that they're fascinating and beautiful, and the same. They are powerful.
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you won a pony? That is the coolest thing. If I was 10 years old and I had won a pony, I would have combusted. I was a wannabe horse girl because I desperately wanted a horse so badly. I like wrote reports on books that I read about horses and gave them to my parents to be like, look, I could take care of a horse because I read this book and here's the report. It wasn't for school. It was a report that I wrote for them. But I didn't get my horse. But it's okay. I'm past it.
I'll admit I'm chuckling a little bit inside too because and thank you for sharing that delightful story, Mary. That's so much fun. It makes me think of Veronica Mars, who always told her dad that she wanted a pony, and of course she never got a pony until at the end she ended up getting a dog, and she named the dog Pony. And so, and I love this. I love Veronica Mars. So, one of the things that before we get away, I also want to tip my hat to you, is the fact. I just think it's so cool you have a character among your students who is hearing impaired. And the fact that she signs, and I just, I thank you for doing that because my older kid has their challenges and is a special needs kid. And could you talk about a little bit about that inclusiveness? Because it's a big world and everybody deserves to play a part in it.
When I was teaching, which was quite a long time ago, I had some special children, and they were wonderful. One of them was hearing impaired, and she taught me sign language, and it would be fun because she was just delightful. And I would walk by. We had a very open area for our teaching. We had 6 rooms and in the middle you could walk through and you could actually see into the classrooms. And she sat next to the door, and she'd go like this, "Are you practicing?" And I knew she was asking me if I was practicing, and I go, "No." I mean, she was wonderful. She was very patient with me. She was our statistician for our volleyball team. She was delightful, and I wanted to include that experience. That's why I have a hearing impaired child. I also had some children that in math, you can have some savants that are unusual, and I had some of those too. So I was very fortunate in my teaching. And I wanted to bring some of that in there, so that's why they're there.
That's really nice.
It is.
I love hearing about that, and I also again, JC had mentioned thank you for teaching, and just all of the work that goes into helping these kids become who they want to be in life. It's a really and it's such a it's an interesting profession to be in the cozy mystery genre because because of our amateur sleuth status that we have, it's really easy when you have a job that allows you to kind of have your own hours and do what you want, but you can't do that with teaching. So the fact that Katie kind of has to, rely on her students, but also to weave her sleuthing around school hours. Is that tricky for you to do? Or there's times where you're like, oh man, I wish I could just have her go off and do this right now, but no, we got to get back to class or something along those lines. Have you ever run into little hurdles that you have to jump over because of the profession that Katie is involved in?
I have. I know she has to go through the day with her kids. She can't just skip out on school. It doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So I am aware of that. Now, realize it has been a long time since I was teaching. I taught for 12 years, and then I had kids and I was home. So I have been away from that universe, but it is so important. It's been so wonderful. My kids have been so fortunate, and I think I agree too that teachers are not given enough kudos. I hope that Katie shows that she can do both. She can teach during the day and she can sleuth not teaching at the same time.
She's got it all.
You do end up getting those days where you think, oh, if she could just leave right now, she'd catch whoever it was because they're over there right at the tennis court and they can see them out the window. But
well, and that brings up another question that kind of came up in our show last week, because we had another Minnesota-based author, Lyndon Norlander, last week, and we talked quite a bit about Minnesota weather. And so here, Sarah, the book she's read is at the beginning of the school year. The book that I've read is at the end of the school year. We haven't talked about Does weather play a part in those December, January, February stories? And can you talk about how that works?
It does. Of course, there's the Christmas stories, and it doesn't really play a part in the Christmas stories, but in fishing festivities and fatalities, they are ice fishing and they go through the ice.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's part of what happens, and that is Minnesota weather.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen, in Texas very often, I don't think. So weather does play a part of the stories as well. Tornadoes in the May book, because that starts getting to be the weather that we start having.
Mhm.
It plays a little bit of part. Not so much as I heard what she said in her story about having to have the fire truck and the plow. I did not have anything like that in my story, but I can see it happening. I can see it happening.
Gosh, you Minnesotans are so tough. I can't imagine
Yeah.
having to deal with all of that's a lot. So like kudos for, making it such, it's such a great state from just it takes care of its people. So you just gotta get through the weather. So Mary, tell us, as we kind of as our hour together begins to wind down, can you share with our viewers, how should they stay connected with you? I know that you have a blog. You can tell us about your blog, newsletter, upcoming events, any in-person events that you're doing. How can folks find you online and stay in touch with you?
I do have a website, maryseifert.com. MarySeifertAuthor.com, sorry. And on that, you can see what books are coming out and where you can purchase them if you'd like, or there's also a place where events are listed where I might be. If you're in Minnesota, I will be at St. Michael at the Twin Cities Sister in Crime Book Fair, Minnesota Mystery. I will be going to Deadwood Reads in June in South Dakota. We'll also be doing some takeovers a takeover with the Cozy Mystery Party. So if you're part of that group, you might be able to catch me there. And I think I am listed in Facebook and in Threads and in Instagram as Mary Seifert Author. So if you're interested, you can look me up there.
Awesome. And folks, just to let you know, Mary's website should be in our show notes, so you can click on it right from our description.
And I'm sorry, but I have to give you a chance to talk about yourself a little bit more, because that's what we do here. I heard you won an award last year down in Nashville.
It was a top pick for the Silver Falchion. I did not win.
Okay.
Thought that was super.
In which book was that?
It was the Creeps, Corpse, and Cash. Oh, this one. It's backwards. It's Creeps, Cash, and Corpses.
Okay.
Ooh.
Okay.
I love all of the like architecture that's included on your book covers. Like you always have like really fun like buildings that are being displayed. And the house, real quickly to circle back onto Ida's home where Katie takes up residence. Maybe share a little bit about what the house looks like. I know that we've got some house lovers in our audience. And when you were, thinking of what this place looked like, was that the thing that first came to mind, or was this something that kind of grew from your experiences?
I first thought it should be a Victorian mansion. That's where I wanted her to live.
Mm-hmm.
And Ida had this great big huge house. So the front half is hers and the back half, it belongs to Katie and her dad. And it is a Queen Anne specifically. So I wanted to make sure I had the architecture right. I had my architecture books, I had my drawing books, and I decided what I wanted to have Ida's house look like and where I could put all the rooms. So I have a little map of Ida's house, and I have a place where the furniture is, and I know where the tables are, and I know where her cooking, because Ida can cook and Katie can't. I have where Ida's beloved kitchen utensils are, and yeah.
That's so cool. I definitely, like when I was a kid, I would draw like on graph paper. I would like make little houses because I was a big player of the Sims video game where you could make houses for people. And I've definitely made houses for my characters as I've written them, because it's a fun way to see like your worlds come to life. I love maps. I love book maps. And the fact that you have a house map is like so fun.
Well, I had to make sure I could get her in and out being seen and not seen by
Mhm.
Ida at a bit.
You know, Mary, one of the things that I do want to ask you here before the easy for me to say before our time runs out here. Um, you know, you've written 9 books. You mentioned that number 10 is on the way. Can you give us a little bit of a teaser? What's going to happen with number 10, and when can we look forward to it being out in the world?
I hope to have it out in the fall.
Okay.
Uh, just about finished with it now, so it should go in to the publisher. It is a story about Katie and the kids going to Atlanta for the
Ooh.
national mock trial competition. Unfortunately, Minnesota weather plays a part in the spring, and the plane can't take them to Atlanta. They have to go through Detroit. So they get to Detroit, and the plane that they were supposed to be on left Detroit without them. So now they have to split up.
Mm.
And I was told by some very dear friends that you do not have a crash landing, you have a forced landing. So Katie and Jane have a forced landing. The kids are okay. The kids are safe. They're in Atlanta. But and then the story grows from there. So it's
Oh.
their trek to Atlanta for the national mock trial competition.
Ooh,
Wow.
so they're outside of their comfort zone of Columbia.
The comfort zone.
Nice.
Holy smokes. Wow. Wow, that's cool. Well, you know, Mary, that sounds fabulous. And you said so we should look for that in the fall, correct? Okay, absolutely. That is excellent. Well, you know, folks, you know, this is the time as we kind of wrap up. We kind of do want to take a chance or take a moment to talk about what we're watching, what we're reading, what we're consuming, what we're loving these days. Sarah, what's on your recommendation list today?
So I'm trying to think of new things that I can share with you guys since we had our show last week, and I haven't really consumed a whole lot in the week since. A couple things that did pop up. We did watch Despicable Me 4. Finally, we've been waiting to watch it for a long time. I don't know if it was as good as I wanted it to be, but it was still a fun Minion movie. I just love those Minions so much. I also watched the new Netflix documentary. It's like the American Murder Gabby Petito story. Definitely think it's a little bit too soon for that to be out. I don't know how her family was able to summon the bravery to talk on screen. And I just want to let everybody know watching that if you don't hear from me within 2 days time, something's wrong. The fact that that it was weeks before anybody reached out. I was like, oh my gosh, no. There's just so many things where I was just watching it be like, no, 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 no. But it was an interesting expose on how that all unfolded. And then listening wise, I've been listening to Letters from an American, which is a daily podcast done by Heather Cox Richardson. She's a historian. And she just kind of talks about history and politics and kind of weaving things in so that I can feel informed, but not necessarily be overwhelmed with all of the information coming to us. And then I can't remember if I mentioned this last week, but I am listening to a podcast that's called Money Crimes. And it's about financial crimes. It spans from people who did get murdered over bad financial things, but also fraud, different Ponzi schemes, some scams that people have done throughout history that are illegal, but they didn't get caught for them or something. I don't know. It's a very interesting sub genre of true crime. So those are my what I've consumed in the recent week. And really quickly before you guys share your picks, we have Susan saying, Mary, she loves the picture of Maverick in the snow on your website. So you've got a Maverick fan. So Mary, feel free to share any books, podcasts, audiobooks, TV shows, movies that you have that we can put on our to watch, to read, to consume lists.
I am reading Panic in the Panhandle.
I know that author. He's cool.
I think so too.
Thank you.
I'm enjoying it. I am watching basketball. we moved to a new location, and we haven't been able to figure out the TV very well.
Oh,
So we're watching whatever we can push the button and find, and basketball is all over right now. And we like March Madness is good, so we're watching a lot of March. Same time, I'm crocheting because I think that'll keep my hands busy, and I can watch basketball and crochet at the same time because I'm not mixing much between. That's pretty much, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And for listening, I'm listening to Finley Donovan is Killing It.
oh yeah.
Those books are so much fun.
I love
Sarah and I got to
Yes.
interview Elle last year at Bookish Hour live at Malice Domestic, and she's such a delightful person. And folks, if you're not familiar with the Finley Donovan books, after you've read all of Mary's books, do that first. And remember, the first one's free. So, I mean, she's giving you a freebie. Come on now. You can't say no to that. After you finish those, then go read the Finley Donovan books, because, you can thank us all later for it, because they are a lot of fun.
You're up, Stacey.
Yeah. What's on your docket, JC?
Yeah, so I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to go out what I've been listening to, but live. The other night, my lovely wife Nancy and I went to see Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats and the Teskey Brothers live and in concert. We're huge. Anyone who's read my books, you all know I love music and I love live music. And we got to see Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats about 4 or 5 years ago at a music festival. It was a great set. Now we got to see them as a headliner. So we loved it. I was up way too late, paid for it the next day because I still had to get up and go to the day job. But that's my plug for live music. Support artists, especially those who, I know, Sarah, you're a huge Swiftie, which Taylor is wonderful. But support the artists who aren't quite as big as Taylor, because live music is just such a wonderful experience. That's my big plug. I will also say that just keep folks, like Sarah said, it's only been a week. Keep reading mysteries. Support mystery authors. Folks like Mary are wonderful. They're creative. Take a chance on somebody you haven't read before, and you won't regret it, because it's that creative immersion that we all need. There, stepping down from my soapbox.
I love that's a great message, JC, and I think in this time where we all need, I think, an escape, that there's no better place to escape to than a warm, welcoming town where the good guy always wins, and we have some fun along the way. We have a comment from Colleen in the chat saying, JC and Sarah are wonderful interviewers. Thank you so much, Colleen. That's very, very kind of you. Such interesting information from Mary. So we appreciate, that's like, thank you, Mary, for being here. Yes. It's been wonderful getting to chat with you, getting to know you. And we're so grateful that you found us through our show and reached out and came on and chatted about your books. We can't wait to hear what's in store for Katie and Maverick once the school year ends, and see what shenanigans that they will get up to in future books.
And Sarah, if I can interrupt you just real quick, just a little tidbit connection, folks, between Sarah and Mary. They use the same narrator for their audio book. So, there's something right there. I mean, because audiobooks are wonderful too. They're totally reading. So you got to check that out too.
Yeah. Melissa Green is like the best in the world. I love her to death. And I am just so tickled. Mary was telling us before the show that she had seen Melissa when we were having one of our bookish hours, and the connection was made. I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a small world. I love it. And it warms my heart. So yes, book 2.
Which book is that, Mary?
I'm sorry?
Which book is that Melissa did with you?
Book number 2, Rogues, Rescues, and Renegade.
Okay.
So many we didn't even get to talk about your titles there and how the amazing alliteration. So you'll have to come back, Mary, and chat with us more about what's in store for Katie and Maverick. But thank you again for being here. We had a delightful time chatting with you. Thank you to our wonderful audience members who joined us live and for your comments. If you guys are watching after the fact, and we can most certainly answer questions in the comment section if you leave them for us. And we, again, appreciate your support. We will be back, not next week, but the week following, with more bookish moments and more bookish fun for you all. So everybody stay healthy, be well, and most importantly, stay bookish. Bye, everyone. Have a great evening.